this will eventually pass and we will get through this. We're not going to spend, time in lockdowns forever. That, there will be an outcome, and, the hospitality industry will bounce back, and all the things that we've missed out on over the last 18 months, they will eventually, come back to us. And I really believe that time is hopefully sooner rather than later.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are chatting to someone who is building a restaurant dream in Carlton, in Melbourne, and it is a lovely place to eat. Lagoon Dining is owned by 3 hospitality professionals, and today we are chatting to front of house man Chris Lerch. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Hey, Dani. Nice to be with you. Good to be speaking with you.
Well, I was just looking at the Lagoon menu in preparation for this chat, and it made me feel really happy and really wistful because I can't eat the food right now. It's not that long since I was there, only a couple of months ago. But can you just pretend that you are bringing me some food? Maybe, I don't know, maybe the kimchi fried rice?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you after a menu introduction or talk to you about what it is?
No, yeah, like I've ordered it because I know it's going to be good, and you're putting it in front of me and you're just describing what I'm about to enjoy.
Yeah, so this is kimchi fried rice with hamon and crispy whitebait.
What I'm seeing is glistening rice, like every grain is lubricated and shiny and sort of separate, but you can tell that it's a little bit sticky.
Yeah.
And you can smell the spice, but there's also this sort of salty, umami kind of cloud.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the kimchi fried rice, so I mean, the versions that we've had of fried rice on our menu since we've opened have always been a highlight, but this version is particularly outstanding. The kimchi is something that we actually ferment in-house ourselves, so I mean, that goes through, I think it's ultimately a 2-week process through all the different aromats, including like shrimp paste and chili and then wombok. The hamon we source from actually Skinner and Hackett up the road in North Carlton, so they provide that for us. I guess the shiny or the glistening element probably comes from there's a little bit of chicken fat that is used during the cooking process as well. The rice that we use is toyoyama, which is a Japanese short grain rice, and when we make our fried rice, it's always cooked and then it's cooled overnight. So you can actually kind of see each grain of rice as well too. And then obviously that adds to the character profile and also the textural, I guess, the mouthfeel as well too. And then the crispy whitebait, I don't know where the idea from adding crispy is obviously a textural element as well too. But just that saltiness kind of rounds out the entire dish. I mean, fried rice is good eaten with any of our kind of saucy, more protein-driven dishes, but that dish on its own, just a big bowl of it, is like something to definitely look forward to once we come out of, this current lockdown. So,
totally. Oh my God, I'm just dying as you're describing it. But, I think last time I was there, I took some of the rice home. We knew we were over ordering on purpose so that there'd be some rice to take home. But what's happened is that I never actually get to eat it. I put it in the fridge and then it always gets snaffled. So yeah, it's a bit of a problem. Maybe I need to double order next time so that I can hide some rice in the back of the fridge for myself. But as you talk about that dish, it really speaks to what Lagoon is all about, because you've got, so many different influences showing there, from the supplier that you love up the road to, the Japanese rice, but it also makes me think of Hainanese chicken rice, which is also, such a, I guess, classic in different parts of Asia. With, the influence of the Hakka cuisine in, many parts of the world. It's such a celebration of difference, but somehow really cohesive. I mean, tell me how you think about Lagoon and the project that you've got there.
Well, I guess the food influence, I mean, that's really kind of testament to, my 2 business partners, Keith and Ned. I mean, they really, really drive that menu. But I guess if we're kind of talking about, a food influence or where that comes from, we do get, inspiration or influence from, China and the many regions or cooking styles throughout. But yeah, we also then, flitter into different parts of Southeast Asia and also, Japan as well too, Malaysia and Thailand. I guess that we probably don't, pinpoint the food influence on one specific style of cuisine or one specific country. I think when we was starting out with Lagoon, we thought that we would be venturing into more Southeast Asian flavors or taking influence from those countries. But then as Keith and Ned started to create the menu and create dishes, they found that they were using more ingredients that were Chinese specific. And I mean, obviously there's Chinese ingredients throughout all parts of Asia, but particularly, regions of Sichuan or Cantonese or Taiwan. So I guess we kind of lean towards the Chinese characteristics, but we don't solely identify, with or, identify as being a Chinese restaurant or solely Chinese influence. I mean, I think the tartare is a really, really good example of where, that blending has come through. There's influence, in that tartare mix, there's a shallot jam as well as radish, and then you're mixing creme fraiche, and then you're mixing green chili and Szechuan. So I think it's really up to, Keith and Ed should take all the credit for that. They're the creative minds behind, all the food influences. And I mean, that's just a reflection of, their personalities and their skill and their interest.
Yeah, and doesn't the tartare come with Chinese donuts as well, those fried long donuts?
Yeah, it comes with the Chinese donuts, which is always warmly received by everyone.
From gluttons like me.
Yeah, oh, no. It's everyone loves a Chinese donut, particularly a fried Chinese donut. And then, when you add those elements of cream and, raw beef, yeah, I mean, it's a good time.
Yeah, totally. So give us a little bit of the backstory of Lagoon. I know you guys have come from fine dining. Tell us the story.
Yeah, so Keith, Ned and I, we all worked together at Ezard many, many years ago. They were apprentices and I were working on the floor. And then we just kind of, you kind of just notice things about each other's personalities and the way that you work together, and then, just your interests, I guess, outside of hospitality as well too. So we started to, I mean, it was just always kind of a loose idea, when, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago, and that was kind of before any, real confirmation or we'd have decided, hey, we're actually going to do this. We would just discuss different ideas or what we like to do and what we liked in restaurants, and there were similarities there. And then as we kind of worked through the ranks and moved up through into different roles and different positions, and people went off and travelled and then came back to Melbourne, we kind of still always shared this idea or this concept that, hey, potentially if there was an opportunity, then the three of us would try and see what we could do or what we could get off the ground. And we actually have a fourth business partner as well too. So Susan came on board with us, and then that's kind of when we went, all right, well, we can actually, start to look into securing a site and thinking a little bit more about, the size and what we were trying to achieve. So in all, I think it's taken, probably 5 or 6 years, I think, from the initial thought process, and then it took at least 12 months of getting off the ground to opening in November of 2019. I mean, 6 months prior to that was all, when all the plans were laid and, all the infrastructure was developed, and, you start working on menus and looking at beverage lists and staffing and all those other bits and bobs that go along with opening a venue.
I mean, you didn't have long before we plunged into the pandemic, did you? But I mean, I feel like even though it's been so stop-start and, frankly, traumatic, you have been able to not only, I guess, create an identity, but also develop it as the restaurant has matured, even though, it's been such a challenging time. Like, how would you describe what you're going for? Like, what is your style of hospitality, and what do you bring from fine dining to, I mean, it's not a casual restaurant, but it's definitely, it feels youthful and nimble and kind of very contemporary.
Yeah, I mean, that was always our intention. We wanted to create a space where obviously we would like to dine, and we wanted people to always feel welcome, and we wanted it to be genuine, and we wanted it to feel generous. And then obviously we wanted it to be flavoursome. So I guess, casual probably isn't the right word for it, but because, everything that we deliver, we kind of deliver to, it needs to be seamless and it needs to be executed really, really well. And, we want each dish to stand, beside each other dish. The elements of service, I guess, are influenced by fine dining as well too. So, we want, it just needs to, and it needs to be comfortable as well too. So I think it has taken us a little bit of time. And despite, opening in November and then closing in March, we did have 4 months of really, really strong trade. So, we were able to, establish ourselves and build a customer base and, as much preparation as you can put into opening a restaurant. And, in your mind, you have all these systems down packed and the way things will always translate. I mean, once you're in a building and once you're in services, it doesn't always kind of go that way. But I guess that's kind of when you start to lean on your experience and your knowledge and you can adapt quite easily. But, we're very fortunate that in that first 4 months that we were open, we were able to build such a loyal kind of customer base. But I guess, our style of hospitality is just, we just want people to have a good time with us. We want it to be memorable. We want them to be thinking about us when they leave, and we want them to be excited for when they come back to us.
I mean, I think about, it's an open kitchen and there's woks flashing and there's the sound and the smoke of that. But then it's also, there is a real, I suppose, a sense of poise in the dining room. I think it's partly because of the way that it's lit. Like, I think there is this sort of, you do really create the zones, even though, the kitchen's open. I mean, does that resonate with you? I mean, are you sort of trying to create a sort of, it's like the space does a few different jobs, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's kind of where I guess our backgrounds and, working in fine dining kind of come into it. And I mean, I think that's the element of design as well too. And I think that's, also, what creates essentially a restaurant experience is all those different elements or all those different visuals or, all those different sounds or all those different emotions, as a diner.
Which are all the things we're missing out on.
Yes, absolutely.
In lockdown number 6, even as you say, we were open for 4 months and we went into lockdown last March. I mean, it was crazy enough as it was, but it just would have been unthinkable then to say, 6 lockdowns later.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that is just kind of most challenging. And I think, particularly after this current one is that, after we came out of our big long lockdowns last year, we thought that we had, that we would never go into lockdown again. I mean, I guess that was in the back of our mind that there was always that potential, but, I think that we all thought that we've done the work and we've, spent the time now, or we've done the time essentially, and that, we were moving in a direction where lockdowns were hopefully going to be a thing of the past. But, obviously they're not still, but I mean, and I think this last one kind of, was even a little bit more challenging just because of the time frame in terms of the way that, it was, 4 o'clock and then, we were done and dusted by 8 and, it was only 2 weeks prior to that, we were in had just come out of another lockdown. So there definitely are challenges with that. And I guess, keeping positive and looking towards the future is, one thing to kind of help you move through all those different emotions. But, we remain positive and we know that hopefully, there will be an outcome which is not going into lockdowns when we do have outbreaks. So, I mean, that's what kind of keeps us positive and keeps us looking towards the future.
Yeah, it is really, really tough. And to maintain a positive attitude is such a challenge. Are you guys doing a takeaway through this period?
Yeah, we are. I mean, the way that you kind of like switch now is quite familiar. So, we do ready to eat stuff and then we offer takeaway on the weekends. So, it's not the same. Obviously, it's not the kind of same revenue as you would take as you're operating as a restaurant, but, it is a little bit of revenue. I mean, it gets your brand out there. I mean, all of our loyal guests get excited, for us, and we still see them popping by, to collect their food on Fridays and Saturdays. So, that's what keeps us motivated, and that's what keeps us positive.
What do you think you've learned about Melbourne and perhaps the hospitality industry in particular through this period?
Yeah, it's actually been really super encouraging, to be honest. I think the amount of care or the amount of interest that people have shown towards, the hospitality industry, and particularly to us as well too, has been super, super generous. So, I think that pre-pandemic and pre-lockdowns, you would ask someone how they were and you would engage in conversation with them, but which was genuine. But I think there is that real kind of interest now in saying, hey, actually, how are you going? How are things, what's the future looking like for you, and how are you feeling? So I think Melbourne has been particularly resilient in terms of the timeframes that we've had to go through lockdowns, and the frequency of them as well too. But yeah, I think we feel very, very supported. So, despite, the challenges, around, the financial commitments that you have, and, your employees and your staff, there is a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of community support. So, that's been amazing.
I mean, I guess it became a little bit easier to talk about mental health in the hospitality industry even before the pandemic. And I think in society generally, it's like people have started to find, I guess, permission or room or courage to speak more openly about challenges with staying positive and feeling on top of things. I mean, do you think that that's sort of accelerated or expanded because of this period, or because I suppose people just can't pretend to be okay when things are so tough?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's opened up, loads of conversations around, hospitality, prior to the pandemic, there was, a lot of discussion around mental health as well too. So, I think this just has opened, up that discussion even more. So, which is amazing, I think, for, any industry or for people in general.
Is there anything that you and your business partners have thought, well, we've had this opportunity to reflect and we are going to do things a bit differently, whether it's in the terms of the business structure or the things that you do outside of work or the way that you communicate with the team and those around you?
I think that we've remained, pretty consistent in terms of our delivery, I guess. Having periods of time where you're not actually in service gives you a little moment to breathe and some time to reflect and think about, the direction of the business and, how we operate. As individuals, as a partnership as well. I think the value of people, we've had some staff with us from day one, which is just incredibly loyal, incredibly generous, and, they're checking in with us as well too. So, I just think, that level of care, and just those relationships, have been, cemented even more. So, there are some positives which have come out, of all of this.
Yeah. I started the day this morning by listening to my brother podcast, Deep in the Weeds, and there was a beautiful chat with Sam Gowing, who's just a fantastic person, one of my faves. And one of the things, she grew up in hospitality and really, is a big fan of the art of dining. And something that she said, she felt like through, I guess, the period where dining's become a bit more accessible and casualised, that she also felt there'd been a reduction in the appreciation for front of house and, the art of hospitality. What do you think about that? And, did you get into the industry because, you really believed in it, or was it something that you fell into?
I think it's something that I've always really believed in, because I've always had, such a strong influence or such a strong interest in food. So, I think service is particularly, is incredibly valued, particularly in Melbourne. I think that, I feel that, people really appreciate service. People appreciate communication. People are looking for, interest, people who are intelligent, who, understand their product, who know how to kind of guide guests from, start to finish, that can make suggestions.
How did you get into the industry?
I just started working as like a young teenager in like a golf club in central Queensland or in coastal Queensland. And then I just worked in different restaurants, this is back in Queensland over the years, and then from larger venues and then kind of went into smaller venues. And I think that's where, being in smaller venues run by sole operators, where the food was a little bit more creative. The guests were more interactive. There was more interest, and then eventually just moved through to, other restaurants within Melbourne. And then finally, I spent most of my time, at Ezard, where I started on the floor, and then I worked up until a restaurant manager. And then it kind of came to that time where, hey, we want to do something on my own.
I mean, Ezard closed last year after 2 decades of just having such an important place in Melbourne's dining pantheon. How do you reflect on that restaurant?
It was an amazing experience for me. Like, I just think that there's so much that, I personally took from there in terms of, and it's, service standards and service sequences and, the value of your guests and how much time that you would spend with people and, the amount of attention to detail. And I just think the amount of joy that people had when they dined there was just incredible. Like, that it was, always a special experience for people, and it was an investment as well too for them. Obviously, it's at the high end of the spectrum. So, and there was that expectation that you had to live up to it. And, you'd go through these, super busy services across the weekends, delivering at this same level. And I don't know, there's a real sense of achievement. And I mean, I just, we've, so many of the guests that have dined with Ezard, now stop by Lagoon as well too. And it's just, you kind of think, oh, will I ever see that person again? Or will I ever interact with them again? And then, they walk through the doors of Lagoon, which is just, amazing. I think it has just like a special place in many people's minds and I guess, hearts as well too.
Absolutely. I mean, do you still think there's a place for that level of dining?
Yeah, I totally do. I think that going to a restaurant, to a high-end restaurant or to a fine dining venue is an experience. I mean, there's nothing... I mean, it's exciting, it's pleasurable. It's probably something that, for most of us that we don't do every day. There's an element of escapism. It's emotional. So I think absolutely there is a still place for that level of dining within hospitality. I think we need it as well too. I admire, restaurateurs that, are opening venues of that. I mean, that's inspiring for us, knowing that people are committing to, these high-end venues and, fine dining. Well, at the moment it might not be as accessible to everyone, but, I'm confident that, in months or years to come that, they'll definitely, across all the levels of hospitality, they'll be strengthening, in all venues. Yeah,
I think we've definitely come to appreciate the value of experiences when so many of our experiences have been curtailed. I definitely agree with you. I think there will always be a place for those high-end restaurants that deliver something that you really can't do except at a certain price point and in a certain environment. Yeah, definitely always, I hope, will be part of the tapestry. Chris, I feel like we need to talk a little bit about wine because you are a really great wine communicator, and I know I've tried some really interesting wines that I, perhaps wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known what I was drinking unless you'd explained it to me. What's your approach to drink service?
Well, I guess Lagoon, when we looked at our beverage list, we wanted to make it accessible, obviously so we wanted to make it accessible as well as the various different price points as well. There's always challenges when matching food with or matching, wine and beverages with spice as well too. So, our beverage list is concise and we have support from one of our friends, Ben Skipper, who takes care of our list for us. Yeah, we just wanted to, but as we've kind of moved through Lagoon, we've noticed that there's more demand for obviously more premium wines too. So we've expanded that along the way, but we try and just keep everything, we try and mix it up. I mean, a lot of our suppliers and distributors have had challenges with importing wine. So, I mean, that creates, well, that means that things are not on the list for as long as probably what, they were first intended to be. But, wine is like part of the service experience as well, too. I mean, it's an introduction. A lot of the varieties that we have, people aren't familiar with. So, there's opportunity for conversation there as well. And then our cocktails and beverages, that's all designed to complement our food offering as well, too. So, I mean, everything. And, we try and change all of our beverages and cocktails at least with every season as well, too. So, but yeah, it's stuff that we like to drink, it's stuff that we enjoy. And yeah, we just like to keep it mix it up.
Oh, it's making me thirsty. So, Chris, vaccination is a topic that is very much in the news. Is it a conversation that you find people in the hospitality industry having? Are you vaccinated? Are you getting vaccinated? Should we all be vaccinated? Should our diners be vaccinated? What are the kinds of conversations that you're having?
I think there's been a little bit of hesitation around talking about vaccination initially. I mean, I guess from, between myself and, guests and people that I've interacted with. But I think within hospitality at the moment now, then everyone is pro-vaccination. And, I would encourage everyone to get vaccinated if they're eligible, obviously. I guess around the vaccination passports, I mean, I'll be curious to see how this would transpire and what people's responses are to it. But ideally, we just want to be in a position where our business can remain open and we can trade. And if that requires, vaccination passports or, higher rates of vaccination, then I guess that's kind of where it needs to be at.
Yeah, whatever does the job, and we can get back to doing the things we love again.
Yeah, that's it. But that's.
What would you say to your fellow restaurateurs and hospo workers, Chris? I think you've got a pretty positive attitude for people who are just doing it really tough and finding it hard to stay upbeat and see the light at the end of the tunnel. What would you say to them?
Well, what I always kind of say to myself is that, this will eventually pass and we will get through this. The future is not always going to be, we're not going to spend, time in lockdowns forever, that, there will be an outcome and, the hospitality industry will bounce back and all the things that we've missed out on over the last 18 months, they will eventually, come back to us, and the freedoms that we've lost, and we'll be able to start to enjoy those again soon. And I really believe that time is hopefully sooner rather than later. And
will there be glistening kimchi fried rice at the end of the road?
There will be. I guess that's one of the other things that keeps us really positive is that we're talking about menu discussions and what the rest of the year looks like at the moment. So, but there will definitely be glistening kimchi fried rice on our menu and available. Okay,
I'm so there for that. Chris, thank you so much for having a chat today. It's really been fantastic to hear what the Lagoon vibe is all about. And yeah, really appreciate you sharing your story with Dirty Linen.
Amazing. Thanks, Dani. Great to speak with you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This